Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Wednesday, September 8th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Oregon game is in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 80 days. That Oregon game is going to be the topic of conversation this morning. We released a bonus show yesterday where we talked a little bit about the visitors for the game. We're going to have a bonus show a little later on today with some of the Oregon assistant coaches previewing the game. But today, we're going to talk about Ohio State's interviews. We talked to Ryan Day. We get to talk to Kerry Combs, got to talk to a couple players. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's Kevin Noon. Kevin, I guess let's start with Chris Olave. He was one of the guys we got to talk about. And every once in a while when you're doing these interviews, you hear someone say something and I'm like, oh, well, that's going to be a big story. Chris Olave was talked about the fact that, when he was a kid, this is a big game for him personally, because when he was a kid, he grew up as an Oregon fan. And then it was like, well, why didn't you go to Oregon? And it was like, well, they didn't get to me in time. I would imagine that's one of those things that is probably going to tick off Oregon fans quite a bit if they hear it. So go ahead and share that story real quick.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I've covered recruiting for so long at various stops, and I guess I look at this from a little bit more of a skeptical eye in terms of people. You talk to these players and they're like, well, I had to go from making a personal decision to making a business decision, and I had to sit there and find the program that fit me correctly, and so on and so forth. But in Chris Olave's instance, Oregon didn't come calling quickly enough, and that's the thing. And it's not a matter of that. Chris is a California guy, but Oregon recruits the West Coast, so they should have been very aware of him. But players of Olave's generation, of that age group, Oregon was hot. With the uniforms and the offense and everything else, and it was just a team to watch at that point. But Oregon fans, obviously, they're going to be outraged. I mean, because of the fact that he's going to be running around out there in the scarlet and gray, and not in whatever variation of green, yellow, gray, fuchsia, whatever Oregon decide, whatever Nike rolls out there for them. God, I love you, Nike. I'm not saying anything bad about you, but whatever they're out there for, there's going to be a certain level of that could have been our guy, whatever. But with that being said, you don't know what a guy develops like from school to school. But ultimately, if I had a nickel for every time I've had a kid say, well, I grew up as a fan of this school, why didn't you go there? Well, I had to make a business decision. Well, the decision was kind of made for Chris when Oregon decided to only get involved in on him on the very last second, and it was too late. Olave had already kind of fallen in love with Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan Day went out and visited California kind of middle of the season, I think, and that was when his recruitment kind of blew up, because it was like once Ohio State offers someone, everyone else goes, oh, who's this kid? And Oregon got in very late. Olave said that Oregon just said, hey, can you come visit us in January? And he said, like, by that point, it was like, this is January of his senior season. So at that point, like, he'd made his decision for Ohio State already. So that will be something that Oregon fans will probably be a little bit salty about. And you might hear about on the broadcast on Saturday. But, I mean, Olave, he has been a very solid, reliable player for Ohio State for 3 years and has turned into a pretty good star. One of the things he talked about was how he knew he needed to get better this year. He needed to improve in a couple different areas this year. One of them was yards after catch. Like, you think about all his big plays, and a lot of them are him catching the ball in the end zone or catching the ball right as he runs into the end zone. He hasn't been the, catch the 5-yard pass, make a couple guys miss, and then take off for 60 yards. But it sounds like that's something that he really took to heart, that he really wanted to improve this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, if he can do both of those things, then, oh my God, it's going to be incredible. Because you look back at, he really burst onto the scene against Michigan a couple years ago, and both those plays were in the end zone, more or less. So, I mean, and that's kind of been his MO. That's what the plays have been. But if you can sit there and you can hit him on the little crosser, if you can hit him on some of these things and allow him to be able to do stuff after the catch, I mean, it's just going to make him that much more valuable. And it wouldn't surprise me if the NFL didn't get in his ear somewhere and say, we need to see you do a little bit more there. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, he's working toward this being his profession, and you have to be as well-rounded as possible. And, you look at Olave, and I don't see him as being somebody who's going to go to Indianapolis and to go to the NFL Combine. And he's not a testing freak. He's not going to be some guy that's going to jump out of the gym or, run a 4.29 or whatever. So what he's putting on tape is going to be his calling card. And what he's put on tape so far obviously has him, Pro Football Focus has him as a top 2 receiver nationally. A lot of these early draft boards have him there. But if he can add this facet to his game, it's just going to raise the stock that much more, and it's going to raise his earning potential.
Yeah, he and Garrett Wilson present a lot of challenges to an opposing defense they also present a lot of challenges to the Ohio State defense in practice. Denzel Burke was kind of one of the big stories with the defense in week 1. And, you don't see a true freshman corner start at Ohio State. Kerry Combs, Tony Gerdeman asked Kerry Combs, did you ever expect Denzel Burke to, be starting game 1? And, before Tony could finish the question, Kerry Combs was no, did not expect that at all. But we heard over and over again, including from Olave, Burke is just putting in the work. He came ready to work. He's put in the time. He's put in the effort. And that's paying off with him doing stuff that you don't see players do at Ohio State.
Right, and he had the advantage of being here earlier than some of the other guys. Honestly, before we got into anything, I thought that maybe Jalen Johnson might be the first guy to be able to make that move. Granted, he was a summer enrollee. A lot of this is helped by the fact that Seven Banks, Cameron Brown were not able to go game 1, but Denzel Burke didn't know that when he arrived on campus. He didn't know that when he's working out on his own in July. He didn't know that at the start of fall camp. So, true self-starter, somebody that's pushing himself, those are the type of players you want to have out there. Those are the guys that are going to end up being captains. Those are going to be the guys that you better enjoy seeing now because they're not going to be here 4 years. So, very high motor, very high drive for Denzel Burke. And, he's been rewarded with the playing time. And, as long as he keeps doing well, we're going to see him in there in the rotation regardless of who else is out there because we've seen the fact that Ohio State likes to play 3 corners. That's never really been an instance of maybe playing 4, but, God help, if they get to the point of having 4 guys that should be, that are first teamers or whatever, they're only going to be better for it.
Yeah, and, you wonder how could a true freshman go on the road against Minnesota and not look completely overwhelmed, not just completely freak out. And, first game in your college career, you always talk about to guys later in their careers, and they'll tell you how terrified they were the first time they went out there. Then Kerry Combs said Denzel Burke was yeah, I'm nervous, but he didn't look nervous when he was out there. He didn't look panicked at all. I think a lot of that may have to do with who you're playing as a wide receiver for Minnesota or this weekend against Oregon is not necessarily quite at the same level of who you're going against in practice every day. And Chris Olave talked about how much that has probably benefited Denzel Burke's development as well.
It didn't hurt that they didn't have to go against Chris Ottman-Bell. He did not dress. He was their number 1 receiver. They didn't have a Rashad Bateman this year. So, there wasn't necessarily that stat grabber receiver, but when you're going against the likes of Wilson and Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba, then we can get into the young guys and everything else. The goal always is we want to make practice more difficult than the game. So then when you get to the game, and it's like the batting donut. You sit there and you swing a bat that's 3 times heavier and whatever. Oh, this bat's light. I can sit there and do whatever with it. Your batting donut is having to go against these first rounders, these NFL first rounders. And then once you get to the game, it's going to be that much easier. That's not to say any of it's easy. I never played the game at this level. It certainly, even when a guy looks effortless out there, I know how difficult it is. And, a lot of credit to Denzel Burke for being able to absorb off of these top receivers that Ohio State has. And I think that it's going to be good for everybody in the secondary because Ohio State's receiver room is just like any other, or unlike any other. I was watching the Ole Miss game last night, Ole Miss Louisville, and they were saying 1-3 that Ole Miss might have the best receiver room in the nation. And I just started cussing at the TV. I'm like, well, apparently you guys are wrong there because that room resides in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, there are some arguments for other rooms in the past, most of them located in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't know that I saw that from anyone from Oxford, Mississippi last night or 2 nights ago, but that's neither here nor there. Another thing that maybe had some Ohio State fans cussing at their TVs was the running back rotation against Minnesota, and no one on the team got 10 carries. It was 9 or below for everyone, and there were, I think, certain players that Ohio State fans and people who cover the team kind of went, I think certain of these people should be getting more of these carries, and certain of these people, and if that means certain people have less, then that means certain people have less. It sounds from what they said like that rotation may be shrinking down a little bit. That was something that Ryan Day talked about. Okay, they only have less than 50 snaps. Maybe that rotation shrinks down a little bit now, and you're seeing a few fewer guys getting meaningful carries.
Right. It was, 48 snaps in the game or whatnot on the offensive side of the ball. If you attempt 23, 25 passes, you only have 25 runs. So you're going to have to spread it out at that point. I do think that, I appeared on Scoop World Order on Monday night, and I was talking with Kirk, and I was talking with Nevada, and, Trevion Henderson does need to see, a little bit more time out there, a little bit more run. I mean, obviously, Mayan Williams breaks off that 70-yarder, then we don't see him out there for an hour. I mean, I understand that there's a situation of wanting to sit there. Everybody's put in the work. You get there, you travel, we want to play you, but at the end of the day, I think it was Herm Edwards, you play to win the game, and, you need to play to win the game, and I think that's going to take a little bit of a shorter rotation, and there's going to be ample opportunity. Once we get to week 3, once we start talking about Tulsa, Akron, Maryland, Rutgers, they're going to be, granted, Ohio State could probably score pretty quickly on some of those defenses as well, but I think there's going to be unlimited run to be able to get some guys some depth going on after that point. But with Oregon, it's going to be all hands on deck, and I think that the hands that need to be hot are going to be Chop and are going to be Trevion Henderson.
Yeah, that's certainly the strong implication there was more Mayan Williams, more Trevion Henderson. I mean, it's ultimately those decisions will fall to Tony Alford. He is the running backs coach. Both this conversation you in the context of that, and also in the context of the defense and the rotations there, and how the defensive line rotation set and all that kind of stuff. That's the position coaches who make those calls. They have input from Ryan Day, they have input from coordinators, but ultimately that's the position coaches who are making those decisions. It does seem like Tony Alford may be paring that room down a little bit. I remember a couple of years ago he was asked, how do you keep all these guys healthy? How do you keep Mike Weber and Tony Alford or J.K. Dobbins and all these other guys happy with the carriers? He goes, that's not my job. It's their job to make me happy. It's not my job to make them happy. You may have some unhappy guys, but if there's a couple guys who are making Tony Alford happy, then those are the guys who are going to play this weekend. That's also true on the defense. It sounds like the defensive rotation is going to be probably pared down a little bit from what it was last week. We don't know yet what the status of Seven Banks and Cam Brown and Josh Proctor is going to be. You can sort of read the tea leaves on Josh Proctor, and it doesn't sound like that was nothing. Everything is fine.
Right.
But Seven Banks was supposedly close to being back last week. You would think he's back this week. Cam Brown is a little more of a gray area. Ryan Day is not going to talk about any of that stuff going into, until they release the availability report, which is probably coming out on Saturday morning at this point, I'm guessing. So that was a question I'm sure a lot of people had. I guess one question I would have is the challenge of playing Oregon after playing Minnesota. Like, you faced a team that is a very, run-heavy, 6-7 offensive linemen on the field at the same time kind of team. Now you're playing a team that is extremely not that. Right. So, is that an advantage for Ohio State in that Oregon can't look at the film from last week and discern personnel and, all that kind of stuff? Or is that a disadvantage because it's like, well, now you've got to sort of start from scratch. You haven't seen this yet this year. You've seen it on film maybe, and you've maybe seen some similar concepts in practice, but you haven't seen in a game anything like what you're going to see against Oregon. So does that help Ohio State? Does that help Oregon? Does it just kind of wash out? Where are you on that?
I think that it helps Ohio State to a certain extent because they're not going to be facing any 13 personnel. And for those, that's one back, three tights, and then, getting into the 6 lineman, 7 lineman type of situation. Oregon is going to be much more of a mobile quarterback with Anthony Brown. I mean, his passing numbers were not off the charts, but again, they could have been holding back a little bit. Again, you don't hold back to the point of where you risk losing the game. They only beat Fresno State by a touchdown. They were down late. I mean, there certainly were some challenges in that game, but I think that Ohio State is not going to be in a situation where it's going to have to be trying to match personnel as much. So maybe some of those hockey line changes that we've kind of talked about on various shows don't exist because what you see from Oregon is going to be much more of a traditional type of situation. It's kind of like when you come out of playing a Navy game and you're playing the triple option, and then it's just like, right, well, we can just take that tape, dig a hole, bury it, burn the pile at that point because we're not going to see that again. They're probably not going to see the type of offense that Minnesota was about. What they're going to see out of Oregon is going to be a lot more representative of what they might see as the year goes on. I don't know if there are as many mobile quarterbacks in terms of the Big Ten as there is in Anthony Brown and what he's able to do. I mean, maybe Ohio State might face a couple better passers than Brown at this point. So I think in a lot of ways it helps Ohio State, but I don't think that you can sit there and get yourself too caught up in that and say, well, just because of that, we're going to be in this great situation. It's going to take a full week of work. It's going to take going out and everybody executing, and Ohio State's not going to be able to come out and play some C- type of game and expect to win. I don't care if it's a 14-point line. There were big lines in some of these other games that I'm not allowed to speak about that happened on the road or whatever, but I think Ohio State just needs to come out and do its business, and everything will work its way out.
Well, and Kerry Combs talked about the fact that there was stuff that they liked from game one. There was a lot of stuff they didn't like. There's room for improvement on a lot of things, and that's true on the offense as well. That's what this week is about. Now you have a week of tape. You always hear more improvement between week 1 and 2 than any other time in the season. This is the week when they're going to be practicing and trying to make those improvements. So, Kevin, I really appreciate you joining me. This is it is going to be a fascinating week here. We have another round of interviews on Wednesday night. We're going to get to talk to Kevin Wilson, as well as another round of players, including Bryson Shaw, but not Josh Proctor. If you want to read anything into that, you are certainly welcome to. But it should be a really, really interesting week. And then, more interviews with the Oregon players and coaches. This is a game that I think a lot of people have been looking forward to for years and years and years. It was a series they were looking forward to for years and years and years, and you didn't get game 1 of the series, so now you get game 2, and it is finally almost here. Should have close to 100,000 people in the Horseshoe for the first time since the Penn State game in 2019. There is a lot to look forward to. It's going to be a really fun week, and it's going to be a fantastic week on the Ask the Insiders board at BuckeyeScoop.com. Our team of insiders has been churning out great reports from inside practice, all sorts of stuff about recruits, and this is a big recruiting weekend as well. There's going to be a lot of that stuff to talk about. And, of course, coverage of press conferences, all that kind of stuff, all leading up to the game. We'll have pregame shows, postgame shows on Saturday, all that kind of stuff. This is a game we know you guys are very interested in, and we see the numbers. We know you're interested, so we're going to give you as much as we possibly can this week because we're interested too. So pregame shows and postgame shows. So if you're watching on YouTube, hit the little bell and subscribe to our channel, and that way you get notified every time we post a new video, every time we post a new podcast, every time we do a pregame show, postgame show, stream our interviews live. We streamed all the interviews live on Tuesday with Ryan Day and the coaches and the players. We're going to do that again Wednesday night, so you get to watch that. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with those, and then all those podcasts and all that kind of stuff. So youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop if you are not there. If you are there, hit that little bell or hit the little logo at the end of this, the little Buckeye Scoop logo at the end of this video, and that'll subscribe you to our channel. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.